Animation has been an integral part of my life since forever. I want to join Mikey's conversation about animation, and there is so much I could talk about. The Pink Panther, My Neighbor the Yamadas, Pokemon, Iron Giant, The Incredibles, Batman the Animated Series, The Wind Rises. Oh wow, I could go on. But for this, I wanted to focus on one. I have seen this literally, I can't even count how much. I have seen this so many times, I was surprised to remember just now it only came out my senior year of high school. And if you say I wasn't a kid yet, it still counts. I wasn't an adult in the eyes of the law yet. I own it on iTunes, DVD, MP4, an art book and comic. My current picture here on YouTube is some impromptu word cosplay, not to mention the word costume I sewed for myself and with generous help from friends. Even though it's been around for less than 4 years, it has been an immensely important part of my life. Over the Garden Wall is a 10-episode miniseries by Cartoon Network released in 2014 over the course of a work week with 2 episodes airing a night for 5 days. It is the story of 2 half-brothers, Wirt and Greg, who get lost in the autumn woods of the unknown and must find their way home with the help of a talking bluebird Beatrice while eluding the grasp of
the Beast.
It's the Beast.
It draws on American folktales, Americana art, and rubber hose animation to tell a tightly knit, compelling, unbelievably human story. Here's what it taught me.
At night, when the lake is a mirror.
I want to start in a weird place. I want to talk about what the structure of the show taught me. A 10-episode miniseries is kind of a weird format, but I think it's perfect. Not that everything should be a 10-episode miniseries, but that this story used its medium amazingly. Originally pitched as a full show with a potential 4 seasons worth of content outlined, the creators had to pare down the original vision into 10 episodes of 11 minutes apiece. Movie length. But more than that, still television, still subdivided into episodes. You couldn't chop A New Hope up into 10th and still give it the impact. The grand idea of what was then the Tome of the Unknown had to be honed, trimmed, and mixed to the best story, but still work as 10 individual stories. The craft and attention to the medium astounded me. I didn't think you could play medium and story off of each other like that. The closest I had seen to that was Samurai Jack's paneling, and yet here was a show that illustrated how you could sharpen and refine your story to make something so carefully crafted and dense with meaning that I could watch it more than probably anything else in my life. The first time I had watched Over the Garden Wall, I was alone in my room, late at night hunched over my laptop in an otherwise pitch-black room. The second time I watched Over the Garden Wall, I was showing it to some friends in broad daylight on a weekend. I got very different things out of it. I thought of it as this dark, serious, creepy story, but when I had my friends, the same scene seemed hilarious. I wasn't wrong either time. A highwayman singing to you about, murdering you is pretty dark. At the same time, a highwayman sauntering on stage, interrupting you mid-sentence, and singing about how he's gonna murder you while dancing like this is pretty funny. It's so tonally versatile. I didn't feel like this media I loved was being treated any less seriously because this little dance the tavern keeper does is funny. I felt a whole new dimension expanding. It doesn't discourage either a critical eye and a step back, nor total investment. I could be swept away with a ghost story and jump a little when a peacock breaks through a window, or be unfazed by the ridiculous Scooby-Doo happenings.
Yes, the truth is, I'm frightened.
Of a ghost? Ghosts are just floaty things.
As much as a story should be built to guide you emotionally, it can also be open to interpretation as a way of being flexible to different contexts. The Unknown is in an ambiguous time, drawing from colonial times to the Civil War to the Gilded Age and the Roaring Twenties. Across it, though, the representation of nature fits pretty consistently with the Romantics. The Romantics and the American counterparts, the Transcendentalists, held a kind of reverence for nature and representing it as the sublime, so spectacular that it inspires or illuminates some deeper truth. The Woodsman is a good representation of this, alone in a wood cabin, self-sufficient and knowledgeable about nature, trying to use nature in a very literal way. Another important idea of the Romantics is a view of childhood. As opposed to a more traditional view of childhood as ignorance and adulthood as knowledge, the Romantics saw that childhood has advantages that adulthood does not, in curiosity, excitement, joy. At the same time, adulthood has advantages childhood does not, independence, critical thinking, knowledge.
It's like French Rococo style. That doesn't really seem in line with Endicott's Georgian sensibilities.
How? What? Who on earth am I talking to right now?
Should I not know that sort of stuff?
The romantic ideal, then, is to grow out of childhood into adulthood, but then to grow out of adulthood into some third state that blends the positive aspects of both. Neither Wirt nor Greg are whole people at the beginning of this story. Greg's playfulness with the candy leads the dog to them, and Wirt's planning leads to fixation and indecisiveness. Both the child and the young adult need to grow and change. Over the Garden Wall taught me that optimism is never misplaced. The show tricks you into thinking it has a complicated, shifting narrative, but knows that this is a trick. The Woodsman is cryptic, but never leads Wirt and Greg astray. The townspeople of the Dark Lantern confuse Wirt and Greg by giving seemingly contradictory information, but both are proven right at the end. By the end, everything about the beast both people said is true. Pottstown's pumpkin people are twisted between suspicious and mundane, but when Moloch says,
"A few hours of manual labor,"
he means it. The threat was never there. Auntie Whispers and Lorna are pretty explicit about which of them poses more danger, but it's our knowledge and words of how these stories tend to go that causes them to think it's Auntie Whispers who gobbles people up. People will tell you who they are. It's best to believe them. Most importantly, the way out of the unknown is optimism. The Edelwood tree is where the beast gains his power, and it is from people with no hope that the tree grows. When Wirt starts to have Edelwood growing on him, Greg trades places and is led off by the beast, who gives him impossible nonsense tasks to make him lose hope. Greg holds out with unfettered optimism that there is always a way out.
Give up? I'll never give up.
And that optimism in the end is, in and of itself, however ambiguously, the way out. Speaking of the end, I haven't talked about episode 9 at all. I've tried to keep this relatively vague to persuade anyone who hasn't seen the show yet, but we're gonna lay all the cards on the table.
I mean, like, really talk to her, you know? Put all my cards on the table, you know?
Yeah.
I really love episode 9, even though it does the exact edgy thing that so many Puzzle Block fans make into edgy cartoon theories. They have, in fact, been dead the whole time. But it's upfront about that. It tells that to you. It doesn't laud it over you with hints, though it is subtle for sure. It works because it's thematically appropriate and planned. The show is built around this rather than being implemented as a catch-all explainer later. The miniseries format means they're able to bake this into every aspect of the show, allowing for setups and payoff rather than getting blindfolded, turned around, and told to swing piñata style. It respects the intelligence of the audience to pick up on things, and it doesn't have to worry about retaining audience with some cliffhanger mystery, or pull from barely remembered incidents because it's the length of a movie over the course of a week. The show knows it's going to end, so it gets to choose very carefully how to pace out the information.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking for a phone. Then I went to go talk to Sarah. I mean, like, really talk to her, you know? Put all my cards on the table, you know?
Yeah.
And then Jason Funderburker comes out of nowhere and whisks her away.
And because of that, the climax of episode 10 feels more complete. You know the context like you hadn't before. The unknown was mysterious before, so it was okay when our protagonists were mysterious too.
My secrets are too secret.
But as Wirt and Greg become more emotionally complete, it is important we know the more complete story behind them. And by putting that in the end, you can compare our heroes from the beginning to the end of the story and see their growth, the arc, on your first time through in a way you might have to revisit for other stories. Simultaneously, by having that more complete story place them in a more contemporary time, it takes the lessons from this fantasy land into a relatable context. You might not think your indecisiveness would paralyze you in front of a gooey big dog, but you might recognize the same indecisiveness when trying to talk to your crush.
Is that bee named Sarah?
What this taught me is twofold. First, edgy doesn't have to be edgy, these story elements can be used well. And second, human stories are human. The exact things being dealt with aren't the same, but the emotions and responses speak to the same character traits today. These aren't lessons I learned my first time through with it. Over the Garden Wall is a gift that keeps giving, and if I could have had this as a kid, I would have loved it. I already try and show this to anyone I can, and age has never been a factor in that. Animation has always been a favorite of mine. I really enjoyed making this. Thanks for the challenge, Mikey. And I look forward to hearing more lessons animation taught us. I have so many more of these I could do, so if you liked it, tell me if you want to hear more from me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.